So this week, kiddies, an incredibly exciting and special parcel arrived at TechSpert Towers, something that made my tummy bubble with absolute joy. Obviously, I'm talking about beer, and nothing beer in fact, and a bloody big box of it as well, hip hip bloody hooray. And naturally, I've already had a bit of a sample of it to review it for you fine folk. First impressions are positive, a rather pleasant mouthfeel, certainly satisfying to get your lips around. Oh no wait, sorry, my bad. This is your mum's review of me from last night. I was definitely getting subtle hints of hops, maybe a bit of barley. And anyway, can 1 went down a treat and I drank another 6 just to make sure I really liked it. And thankfully the alcohol content isn't nothing, it's just over 5%, so I was pleasantly 5 out of 5 stars, would drink it to get bollocksed again. And now, Google and Apple stuff I guess. TechSpert Weekly! So this week's great big spotterific tech event was the Made by Google effort in New York City. New York! Is that racist? That's probably racist. Maybe just cut the shit right out. Or maybe don't, actually. Maybe leaving this bit in proves that I'm not a massive racist. Ha. Now Google's big reveal wasn't so much a reveal per se as everything had already leaked to absolute buggery well beforehand. But now the Pixel 8 and the Pixel 8 Pro are once again officially a thing. And on the surface level, these are strikingly familiar phones, but Google has packed in a few intriguing updates. So for instance, the camera hardware is quite similar to last year's Pixel 7 series. You've got a dual lens setup on the Pixel 8, and then you've got a bonus telephoto shooter on the Pixel 8 Pro with 5x optical zoom. But these phones do sport upgraded lenses, you've got wider apertures now, so hopefully better for low light shooting. You've also got an upgraded ultra wide angle shooter on the Pro phone. And Google has well and truly gone balls deep with its AI enhancements, which adds quite a few new nifty camera features. So now you've got a sort of night mode for video, which can help to brighten stuff up and crush any noise, as well as a tool to remove unwanted audio guff. Stuff like your wife screaming at you to, for f***'s sake, stop filming the cat and come give her a hand building the new shed. And the Pixel 8's also come packing some new photo editing skills to help you fix up not ideal faces in a photo. So presumably I'll be able to replace my own pale haggard mug with something a bit easier on the eye. As for other updates, well, the Pixel 8 series is powered by the latest Tensor 3 chipset, which hopefully won't get quite as thigh-toastingly warm as the last two. Those batteries are ever so slightly bigger, while the screens are brighter and smoother, with some tasty LTPO action for the Pro. And Google also showed off some extra smarty bollocks AI shenanigans that Pixel owners will exclusively enjoy, including a new time-saving tool which can take a long article, so something with more than 150 words, and produce a succinct summary of all of the important bits, thus giving you more time to spend on today's Wordle. Finally! So for instance, say you were to browse to any article on dailymail.com, the summary would likely be, "Trans people bad! Hate, hate, destroy, destroy!" And hey, maybe this AI summary stuff will do a similar cut-down jobby on YouTube videos one day. So the average TechSpert video will be sliced down to something like, "Hello phone, big jobbies, shenanigans, rather girthy, said your mum, shenanigans, iPhone still poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell, cock juice." And somewhat excitingly, Google is also committing to seven full years of security and OS updates, which will see you right through to 2030. By which point, if the apocalypse still sadly hasn't happened, maybe we'll actually finally have self-driving cars, and George R.R. Martin will have written that f***ing book. Now, I've got the Pixel 8 and the Pixel 8 Pro, they're here at TechSpert Towers, but I can't share much at all really until Google's embargo lifts. So for instance, I'm not allowed to show the UI or the OS, I can't talk about the new features or any pre-existing features. I can basically show you stills of the phone switched off, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, here you go. Ooh, etc. Stay tuned for full unboxings, reviews, comparisons, etc. from next Thursday. And Google also showed off its fresh new Pixel Watch 2, which also hits those strong deja vu notes, but it does boast several fitness related refinements. You've got more accurate heart rate tracking, improved stress tracking, which can even monitor how sweaty you get, yum, and a greater variety of sports tracking. There was also just about enough time for some new Pixel buds, and I'm hoping to bring you a full review of all of this shiny stuff soon. So that's Google shenanigans for the week, but what about its big rival Apple? Well, against my better judgment and also doctor's orders, I've once again been testing the iPhone 15 Pro Max all week. I've had my SIM slapped in there for a good chunk of it when I wasn't reviewing the Sony Xperia 5 Mark V. And we've also had a shagload of comments from viewers from last week's episode all about this shiny shower of shit. So let's get into it. Viewer comments. Deep breath, kiddies. We're heading back in. I kind of feel like Ripley in Aliens, like, what the f am I doing here? So let's start with Scotty666TT. You read Scotty, who says, that's wild about the battery life. My first day, I ended up getting almost 11 hours screen on time over 24 hours before plugging in at 20%. As the week has progressed, it hasn't been that good, but definitely pretty good. And that right there is the absolutely brilliant thing about the iPhone 15 Pro Max, is that everyone's experience with it is so wildly inconsistent that everyone's got a different story about overheating, battery life, etc. Like one guy I know is having massive Bluetooth issues with his iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's juddering or cutting out or just refusing to connect, whereas it's been absolutely fine here on mine. It's just absolutely mad considering Apple is in control of both the hardware and the software here. It should be a consistent experience. It makes no f***ing sense, and it's only question one and already I'm getting wound up, so that's brilliant. Anyway, getting back to the battery life, 2 weeks in now with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and after quite a lot of jiggery pokery, reinstalling apps, all kinds of behind the scenes shenanigans, that battery life is still what I would like to refer to as a massive dripping sack of wank juice. Like most days, I end up having to recharge this absolute brick before I've even downed my 5th double espresso of the day. Here's a typical example right here. I'll usually burn through around 150% of battery life at a single wake a day, and that's with around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, with minimal camera play, zero gaming, like basic shit at best. And at times this phone still gets hotter than Cerberus's scrotum, even when it's just hibernating in my pocket and streaming, a bit of Apple Podcasts or Deezer or something to a speaker or a pair of headphones. Apple eventually got around to releasing a statement this week about all the many issues that people are having, and they've hilariously decided to take the blame everything on Mark Zuckerberg line of defense, which I actually kind of enjoyed because that dude, seriously, he's the human equivalent of irritable bowel syndrome. In fact, even using the word human is perhaps being a bit too kind. He's basically what you would get if it was physically possible for a lizard to reproduce with the herpes virus. However, in this particular case, unfortunately, it's just complete and utter bollocks, because I don't have Instagram installed on this thing. I mean, look at me. Not exactly a massive selfie fan, shall we say. I also don't have Uber installed or any of those other apps that they were basically saying were to blame. So unless Instagram has somehow become sentient and found a way of infiltrating iPhones, I just don't know. I think it's a cellular issue, or at least that's partly to blame, because whenever I take my SIM out of the iPhone and just use it, just stream stuff over the Wi-Fi, network or whatever, that battery life isn't as bad. So basically what it all comes down to is it's all my fault for trying to use the iPhone as a f***ing phone. Anyway, he's hoping that Apple sneaks a fix into an update at some point soon, otherwise I can see a lot of these mighty slabs being sent right the f*** back. And moving swiftly on, just another viewer says, I still cannot believe how Apple fumbled the first few weeks of the product go live. I mean, it's been like that a few times now for Apple products. I mean, yeah, I'll obviously get a lot of Android smartphones into review. I often get them 2 or 3 weeks before they actually officially launch. So there's understandably bugs and little issues quite often which then get fixed, either prior to release or just as they are released. But in this case, this is f***ing mental. And it's not even like Apple are releasing, a dozen new smartphones a year, like a Xiaomi or a Motorola or something like that. Pat Dud says, would be fun to see if you can cook an egg on the back of the iPhone. Yeah, £1,000 egg fryer right here. Well, it certainly made my leg meat sizzle. And Zol Hazrin says, how about trying to bend it? And likewise, Flivio says, when you're done reviewing the iPhone, I for inferior, do the bend test, guaranteed fail. Hey, I paid good money for this thing, alright. I don't have that hot jerry-rig ad avenue coming in, so I'm definitely not breaking the bastard. I'm trading this thing in for the next stupidly expensive iPhone so I don't have to eat air on toast for several months to afford it. The Master says, people in the UK always complain about the iPhone, but they're the first ones in line to buy it. Hypocrites. Yeah, of course we complain about the iPhone. We complain about everything, mate. That's what makes us British. And of course, British people are going to be the first in line at an Apple store in the UK. Who else is going to be f***ing there? You might get the odd tourist. Chris Johansson said, I already returned my 15 Pro Max. iOS is god awful. And I gotta say, considering everyone always bangs on about how iOS is like user friendly and really easy to get on with, I find that every time I swap over from Android to iOS to review an iPhone, I spend ages just trying to figure out how basic works. Honestly, I feel like a janitor who's suddenly been promoted to chief scientist at the laboratory for mega boffins. Oh, I also forgot last week to complain about how Apple Maps is still utter balls. I've been using it instead of Google Maps on this thing the entire time, just to see if it's a little bit less wank than it used to be. Sadly, not the case, despite the fact you can now download offline maps, which is pretty friggin' good. It seems to be fine if you live over in the States, but here in London mind you, not exactly a teeny town in the middle of sheep shagging central, it's just constantly bollocks. Like, for instance, earlier this week I was rushing for a Costa which Apple Maps insisted was still open in the piss and rain. I was dreaming about just a nice double bastard strength espresso at the other end and a wee bit of shelter. And of course, what do I see when I get there? Big fat f***ing closed sign. And then earlier this week I was searching for a pub which I was going to meet a mate in for a couple of drinks, and I tried tapping the website. Just, get an idea of the kind of food and delicious beverages that would be on offer. And eventually, after about half a minute or so... there we go. Safari realised that the website doesn't exist because it's actually the old website from about a couple of years ago. It just hasn't been updated. Oh, and occasionally Apple Podcasts will insist that it is indeed playing a podcast, but not actually bother to generate any audio unless you turn the Wi-Fi off or turn the Wi-Fi on, or strip off and slather your naked torso in chicken blood and run screaming down the f***ing street or whatever. So in summary, this best of a Apple. Mortal6 says, honestly, I gotta say that Apple really lost their standards since Steve Jobs died. I mean, it's probably not a coincidence that the last truly innovative Apple products happened before he snuffed it, and since then it's just been minor upgrades of existing products and then stupid shit like £4,000 VR headsets. Campbella 1982 says, how many pints did you have on that night shot? Gotta admit, my memory's a wee bit hazy of that particular evening. It was certainly more than 5, probably less than 12. Fountain Pen Journey says, cheers Chris, you're better than Martin Lewis by slating the iPhone and saving me £1,000. But hey, I'm a northerner and therefore by extension an utter skinflint. I'm all about saving that cash monies. And I've also got some people here asking me if I'm going to review the regular iPhone 15. Look, I realise that I'm a masochist, but even I have my limits, alright? Plus I do have a stack of smartphones there that aren't overpriced toss that I really need to review. And anyway, that right there, kiddies, is this week's iPhone 15 Pro Max update. Yay! It's the iPhone 15 Pro Max update. Still continuing with the non-iPhone-y viewer comments, Krisner says, Ten Hag now being a phone reviewer. Yes, I already had a good bit of this back in the glory days of which crap celebrity do I look like this week. You know what, I would take Ten Hag, certainly anytime, because he's got kind of a really smouldering smolder. Like, he's basically got that look in his eyes at all times, like he would f*** you until your brains leaked out of your ears. It wouldn't be tender by any means, oh no, but by the end of it you'll have orgasmed like a dozen times and you'll just be a fleshy puddle on the mattress, that little bit closer to God. Whereas me, myself, well, I'd be done in 20 seconds and then another 20 seconds later we'd be sat up in bed watching Match of the Day and scoffing mini Scotch eggs straight out of the packet. Lance Richards says, Uncle Spurt, it's not my birthday, but wish me happy birthday anyway. Happy birthday, buddy! Uncle Spurt wishes you a spurtastic day. Grebo and Gaspod says, just wondering why you have Head and Shoulders shampoo as seen in your scary shower scene. Is it because the previous week's giant piece of fluff on your head actually turned out to be a huge bit of dandruff? No, this is very much a case of prevention. So I've got the Head and Shoulders to prevent from having a snowy scalp, just as when I visit your mum, I slap on a rubber Johnny to prevent from getting the clap. Your Uncle Spurt, he's a dried out husk these days. I basically have to slather on litres of E45 just to avoid crumbling into dust. Will Rivera says, saw you make a cameo on Joshua Vergara's Xiaomi 13T video. Yes, I saw the lad on that Xiaomi trip, and thankfully I think he took the photos of me in the Italian restaurant before I spattered tomato sauce all over my white f***ing t-shirt. Mop the Jacko says, what if the new SE is based on the now defunct Mini? That might actually be pretty bloody good, because the iPhone mini was always my favourite iPhone, so one of those for around sort of 450, 500-ish quid might not suck monkey tits. The Master 711 says, no question, just hope that you have a great day. It was going alright until I started talking about the bloody iPhone again, but thank you very much, sir, much appreciated. And Paul Robinson asking me what is my daily driver. The answer there is basically whatever I'm reviewing, I have my SIM slapped inside, using it as my full-time smartphone, and there's so many new phones these days. It tends to be a different phone every week. Rare to get any kind of grace period. That said though, I have started carrying the Google Pixel Fold with me when I go on trips and things like that as well, because it's really bloody good for reading manga. Just unfold it and, you know, smash through a good few volumes like that. It does feel like you're just reading a book. Spot the nerd up in here. On the subject of manga as well, Donald Not Donald says, since you asked nicely mate, I won't ask a tech question. Instead, in a three-way dance, which classic manga comes out on top? 3x3 Eyes versus Fist of the North Star versus Devilman. P.S. iPhones in general can get f***ed. Lots of love from the north of Ireland. Well, I don't know the Eyes one as good as the others, and out of Fist of the North Star and Devilman, it has to be Fist of the North Star, because, you know, one punch exploding goodness. Hugely running out of time thanks to the massive iPhone-shaped rant at the start of viewer comments, so last couple now. Garrett Raymond says, I'm glad to see the hate for James Corden goes beyond these USA borders. I would be very interested to see the love-hate ratio amongst people who live in the States for James Corden, because you guys put up with him for a long f***ing time despite his car shagging shenanigans while dressed as a giant mouse in Rush Hour and all those other acts of grade A c***itude. I really am surprised he ended up there as long as he did, because you Americans are actually quite vocal about things that you dislike, whereas us Brits we just kind of mumble into our pints. Oh, bloody James Corden, smug prick. I'll tell you what, if I saw him in the street, I'd tell him off good and proper. Urgh. That said, please do take the f***er back. You know, I mean, just take him and just stick him away in one of those internal states where, you know, there's f*** people and nothing going on whatsoever, like, I don't know, South Dakota? Anyway, a massive thanks to everyone who commented last week. Please do smash your questions, comments, theories, whatever else down below, and we'll try and blaze our way through as many of those as possible next week. And speaking of next week, what the f*** is next week? So next week, as I mentioned before, Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro embargo lifts on the Thursday, so expect an absolute slew of content on YouTube and the internet in general about those bad boys. Please do join your Uncle Spurt for a bit of unboxing, comparisons, camera tests, all the usual good stuff. Promise it'll be red hot smouldering just like that Ten Hag fella. Sadly, no Techspert Weekly next Friday though. Sorry kiddies, your Uncle Spurt is buggering off. Either to drink himself into an early grave because of all of the Pixel shenanigans, or possibly rehab, who can tell. But please do smash your comments, queries, etc. down in the comments below, and we will blaze our way through as many of those as possible in a fortnight's time. In the meantime, thanks again for joining me for this shower of right to the bitter end. Please do plug subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a bloody wonderful weekend. Cheers everyone, love you!